1,000 subscribers. I finally made it. Now, I'm not usually one to brag about such things. In fact, I do not like bragging about such things. It's why I haven't mentioned it until now. Well, that, and I wanted to make sure my channel stayed above 1,000 subscribers for a few days, which it has, so here I am. I should point out that it took me a long time to get to this point. Over 10 years, in fact. I set up this YouTube channel in 2012, and I've had plenty of other channels before this one, going all the way back to 2007. The fact that one of them could have over 1,000 subscribers is just so... I don't know what to say other than thank you. Thank you so much for supporting me after all these years. If you've been around since the days when I uploaded Sonic Robo Blast 2 videos all day, or if you came on board after the Starbound Isn't Dead video I made recently, or indeed after I switched over to making Starbound related content mainly, it doesn't matter. Thank you, thank you, thank you all so much. I really do appreciate it. Now, my YouTube channel has not always been active during the 11 years it's been around. There was a time between early 2018 and early 2020 when I just did not upload anything, period. That's because I'd given up on my channel by that point and moved on to other projects. Most of the videos, the content I'd uploaded and made before that point kinda sucked. Well, aside from stuff like my dead card game videos. My core audience was not as big as it is today, and you could argue that I was more well known for making My Little Pony Friendship is Magic fan art. Yes, as I've mentioned in previous vlogs, I used to be a brony. You are free to laugh at me about that, and seriously, that could be a vlog in and of itself. That aside, what pushed me away from YouTube for a while was YouTube changing channel monetization eligibility requirements. Believe it or not, my channel was monetized between the fall of 2016 and the start of 2018, around the same time as my first attempt to build up this YouTube channel, with content like my dead card game videos. When YouTube changed the rules for channel monetization in early 2018, or maybe late 2017, so that channels like what I had at the time were no longer eligible for monetization, I sort of took it as an indication that I had failed. Like, this was not meant to be, and I should move on to something else. That something else turned out to be a fiction writing project known as the Proxima Realms. At least, that was the final name for that project. Before that, the Proxima Realms was called Nashronth. Let me say that again. Nashronth. In a nutshell, the Proxima Realms, or Nashronth, was a work of fantasy. More specifically, it was a setting. And I wrote many stories and created tons of artwork based around the Proxima Realms. And I will sprinkle some of that artwork and even some story excerpts into the video from here on. Now, before I get too deep into the Proxima Realms, what it was, specifically some of the stories, first, let's set the scene. It's December of 2014. I know, we're going back in time again. To my third semester of college. I had just finished my final exams, and even before I got the results back, I knew I'd flunked out. I had wanted to major in computer science and, more specifically, become an IT guy. But what changed all that for me was the fact that I had started making My Little Pony fan art around that time, mid to late 2014. I even wrote some MLP fanfics around that time, which to this day remain unpublished. More than likely, they will remain unpublished. Regardless, I found myself having much more fun making fan art and writing fanfics than learning C++ all day long. Thus, in early January of 2015, I dropped out of college. And I'm sure my professors reacted to that by going, "Oh, there goes another one." But I felt like that was the best decision for me to make at the time. I could feel myself drifting away from wanting to work in IT and more towards being a creative type, a writer, an artist. And indeed, around January of 2015, I started getting these ideas for more original stuff. One of these original ideas was a poor man's Star Trek. Not even a joke, that's what it was. I'm not even going to tell you the title because, let's be honest, I've forgotten it at this point. Another idea, which came along a couple of years later, so early 2017, was something called Tales of Senor. Now, this is something that might get a vlog in and of itself, because there were some pretty neat ideas associated with that concept. Maybe not unique, but still. Tales of Senor also had its fair share of weird and perhaps even cringy ideas that ultimately got it shelved. Like, it got to the point where I just didn't want to work on it anymore. And I gave up on that to conjure up some ideas that weren't as cringy, I guess you could say. Mind you, nothing related to Tales of Senor was ever published. All of my original writing projects to this point have been side jobs for me. Stuff I did not intend to publish because it was just things I could do to help break up the monotonous grind of creating content for my YouTube channel all day long. And then we come to late 2017. I had just finished watching this cartoon on Netflix called Lego Elves Secrets of Elvendale, I believe. The only two reasons I decided to watch it were A, the fact that it was animated by Studio Mir, aka the people who did Legend of Korra, and B, because I recognized some of the voice actors from MLP. Ashley Ball, Nicole Oliver, and Vincent Tong come to mind. It was also around that time when one of my friends set up a Minecraft Feed the Beast server. Now, if you don't know what Feed the Beast is, they're basically mod packs for Minecraft, huge ones even. And one of the mods on this particular Feed the Beast mod pack was called the Twilight Forest. Yes, it's still around. Yes, it's still amazing. Yes, in my mind, it's one of the best Minecraft mods of all time. Yes, I'm getting off track. Twilight Forest plus that silly little Lego Elves show was, believe it or not, the genesis of Nashronth. Finally, almost 7.5 minutes into this vlog, and I can start explaining just what the hell Nashronth and the Proxima realms were. First, I should explain the Proxima realm setting, at least as seen in the stories that wound up being published. Most Proxima realm stories took place in a world baked in eternal twilight, known as Nashronth. And already we're starting to see similarities between Nashronth and the Twilight Forest Minecraft mod. Indeed, you could argue that I was ripping off the Twilight Forest. I just thought it was a cool setting. Simple as that. In fact, the very first name I came up with for the Proxima realms when I started working on it in late 2017 was, drumroll please, the Twilight Elves. I mean, I couldn't call it the Twilight Zone. And I believe I wanted to call it the Twilight Realm, but I thought that was too close to the Twilight Zone. And the Twilight Forest. Talk about wearing your inspirations on your sleeves. Right. Let's take those sleeves off. Let's try to come up with something more original. Like how Nashronth is actually Proxima b, one of the real-life planets orbiting Proxima Centauri, aka the closest star to our Sun. Proxima b's orbit places it within the region around its star known as the habitable zone. The region around a star where liquid water and possibly, theoretically, life as we know it could exist. Hence the Proxima realms. And it sort of made sense. I came up with this calendar for Nashronth that was 396 days long, with 33 days per month, 12 months in total, and 11 days per week. 1 year on Proxima b lasts about 11 days. I rest my case. But what is Nashronth, you might be asking? What can you find there? Who lives there? Well, first, you'll find trees. Lots and lots and lots of trees. Forests as far as the eye can see. Rainforests, tropical rainforests even. Yeah, Nashronth is a fairly warm place, so I would suggest dressing lightly if you decide to visit. Now, regarding who lives in Nashronth, elves. Lots of elves. Magical elves, even. Non-magical elves. A few random human beings. Moth people. Dryads. Naiads. Lampads. Okay, I should mention at this point that I was going for sort of a Greco-Roman aesthetic with Nashronth. At least the elven world of Nashronth. I wound up using a bunch of beings from Greek mythology, so dryads, naiads, and so on to help fill out the world. Kinda like what Magic the Gathering did with Theros. However, towards the end of the Proxima Realms, I started shying away from using elements and references like those, in favor of something more original and unique to myself. So I changed some of the names around, changed some of these people's powers, their magics, even changed what some of these people looked like. The thing is, none of that wound up in any published story. In fact, if I remember right, they never wound up in any story idea. They were literally just ideas I had towards the very end of the Proxima Realms. Around the time I decided to resurrect my YouTube channel from the dead, but I'll get to that. Obviously, Nashronth was more than just elves and dryads and the moth people, also known as the Maure, but if I were to list every single sentient species that wound up in either a published Proxima Realm story or a Proxima Realm story idea, I would be here all day long. Not even a joke. Of course, you gotta give these elves and dryads and other people some places to live. And oh dear, here comes some wacky names. From Kinas, aka the Elven Nation, we have Mayakos, the capital of said nation, Jalfron, an industrial center, Nixtosa, the city of dryads, Jadablal, the city of stuff, and Jefada, a major port city on the west coast of Nashronth. Really though, the only way these places will truly make sense to you is if you've read the stories. And considering the fact that only 0.00001% of you have read these stories, let's just dive right into them, shall we? Starting from the very beginning with the very first Proxima Realm story series, also known as Nashronth, also known as Quest for the Staff. So, there's this kid named Roger Alcorn. He's been having these weird dreams as of late, about this pink-haired elven-looking girl holding this weird glowing geode. It turns out that the pink-haired girl wants this kid to come to Nashronth because he has been selected to join an elite team of heroes, the pink-haired girl included, who are going on a quest for a staff. The Staff of Life, or rather, the 6 pieces of the Staff of Life, which are scattered all over Nashronth. Why are these people looking for the Staff of Life? Because the Dark Queen Rotha has risen once again. She is evil, and she needs to be defeated, or destroyed. And only the Staff of Life can destroy her. Now, you might be asking at this point, how old is this kid, Roger? Only 8 years old? Why does the pink-haired girl want an 8-year-old to go on a quest that could get him killed? Because Roger's grandma, Patricia, was a legendary hero of Nashronth. She was also besties with the pink-haired girl's grandma and the Queen of Kinas, who just so happens to be putting together this team of heroes. That includes an 8-year-old who has never been to Nashronth before. I think you might be starting to see some of the problems this story series has. Okay, I need to come clean. When I first started work on the Proxima Realms and that first story series, Nashronth, or Quest for the Staff, I had originally intended it to be a children's story series. Why? It's because of some of the crazier and cringier ideas I had for Tales of Senor. Hence why I went on that huge tangent earlier about Tales of Senor. I did not want to do any of that again, therefore I imposed some hard limits on myself. But those limits soon loosened, by quite a bit actually. I found myself having so much fun while working on the Proxima Realms, I wound up doing stuff like creating my own languages for these stories. Don't believe me? Elasenton da Nashronth a korai, isul dora, tavasi kalafos, kilameke su, bikande de sab bisa skule su, prepeta bain, tavasi kalasku han birimiam gya buva ku. Yes, I needed to practice that a few times. More than a few times, actually. And in any case, if your heads are still intact after hearing all of that nonsense, here's what that translates to. Come to Nashronth soon, boy. Isil'dora, the Queen of the Light, has summoned you. Go to the forest behind your school. I warn you, the Dark Queen waits for no one. That was an excerpt from the very first Nashronth story I ever published, The Portal, in March of 2018. The story has been revised a couple of times over the years, but to this day, that little bit of dialogue still exists in the story on page 8. Page 8 of the story. Holy crap, that should not exist on page 8. Or 18. Or 28. Or any 8 for that matter. Not even the 8 in Roger Alcorn's age deserves that. Anyways, Roger figures out what she's trying to say, after she helps him a bit, and the next day, he goes into the woods behind his school, in the middle of recess no less, apparently there are no teachers watching, and he finds, what else? A portal to Nashronth, which is of course a large puddle of water on the ground that starts glowing and turns weird colors when Roger approaches it. And of course he just jumps right in. Why wouldn't he? Now, I'm not going to go through and nitpick this entire story because that would just take way too long. Instead, I'm just going to tell you how the series ends. Our team of heroes and the inexplicable 8-year-old find the 6 pieces of the staff and defeat the Dark Queen. Saw that one coming, right? Well, to be fair, there's more to it than just ding dong the Dark Queen's dead. Some evil people turned into good people and joined the team. Some good people on the team got seduced by the dark side of the Force. We got to meet the pink-haired girl's grandma and Roger's grandma, blah blah blah. Oh, and the 8-year-old becomes a wizard. And the pink-haired girl's name is Aliya. Not sure why I haven't mentioned that by now. Still, the problem with all of this is the stories themselves. Even most of the characters. They're not bad, not good, just painfully mediocre and completely forgettable. In my view, at least. And this might be the Proxima Realms' biggest crime. See, I've always been one to believe that it's one thing to be so outlandishly bad. Let's say something like Power Rangers Operation Overdrive. The stories and the writing are terrible. The characters are insufferable. Well, most of them. Mac's alright, though. And Spencer, can't forget him. Still, there are many, many good reasons why Operation Overdrive is considered by many Power Rangers fans to be the absolute worst season of Power Rangers ever. I don't see it that way. I've always considered Megaforce and Super Megaforce to be even worse, if only because they were just so bland, forgettable, mostly. Half-assed, even. I will give Megaforce and Super Megaforce credit in that its characters are mostly better than what was in Operation Overdrive. Well, unless you're Gosei, who just hands out Megazords and weapons like he had a surplus, and he's a terrible mentor. And Troy is a terrible Red Ranger. And, well, like I said, mostly better. In that there's mostly not much to them outside of some basic character traits. At least Robo Knight stood out a bit. The stories are, unfortunately, the same mixed bag of mediocrity. Well, until we get to Super Megaforce, but that's a topic for another day. We're not here to discuss Power Rangers, we're here to discuss the Proxima Realms, and how the Proxima Realms falls into that same mixed bag of mediocrity that Power Rangers Megaforce wound up in. Even when better writing and better characters came along in stories after that first Nashronth series, I still felt like things were just so forgettable. The second Nashronth series I created, The Ascendancy, still in that painfully mediocre zone. Even despite some better characters, particularly on the villain side of things, it got balanced out by more botched execution in my mind. Really, the only way you can understand any of this, though, is if you've read the stories, which, if there is enough interest, and it's possible that this might happen regardless, I might link every single Nashronth and Proxima Realm story I ever published, and even some ideas and material that did not get published, as a download in this video's description. Now, it's possible that I'm being too harsh on myself. It's possible that if you read these stories, you might walk away from them saying, hey, that was actually pretty good. Which I'd be flattered by, don't get me wrong. But I guess what I'm trying to say here is, you might like something I don't. And if I were to be completely and bluntly honest with you, I think there's more bad than good in the Proxima Realms. Don't get me wrong, I still believe to this day that there were some great ideas and characters that wound up in the Proxima Realms, particularly in the later stories and story series I created, such as The Ascendancy. It's just that, because of some of the reasons I mentioned already, and some reasons I'll get to in just a moment, I tend to view the Proxima Realms as a whole as more bad than good. Simplifying things quite a bit here, but I hope you get the point. One reason why the Proxima Realms exists is it was a form of escapism. I was going through some rough times in late 2017, early 2018, and I wanted to create this world that I could escape to, that I could feel totally satisfied being a part of. And I remember getting so excited about this idea I had for the Proxima Realms, for Nashronth, that I wanted to share it with everybody. That's why I set up a Patreon for the Proxima Realms, for Nashronth. Yeah, that Patreon I keep telling you to throw money at, that's been around longer than you might realize. It's been around since 2018, around the time I published that first Nashronth story, The Portal. And that Patreon is where I published all of my stories. They're not available any longer because I nuked all the old posts associated with the Proxima Realms after I started retooling the Patreon more to fit the YouTube channel. But still, there came a time where I felt the need to take a look at myself and say, look, Sutek, you have been toiling away at this Proxima Realm stuff for, 4 years at this point? And it's gotten you nowhere. You're spinning your wheels in place, and nobody is paying attention. You've been crying out for feedback on this material for 4 years now, and nobody has responded. You've been wanting to hire artists and editors for all this time, and nothing has happened on that front. You've become your own artist and editor. And you're not fond of that. You've become your own worst critic. Best to cut your losses and move on. And that's what I did. I suspended all work related to the Proxima Realms in early 2021 so I could build up my YouTube channel again. 2 years later, here I am with my channel sitting above 1,000 subscribers. I think I made the right decision there. In fact, the more I think about it, the more I feel like I've dropped out of college all over again, in a way. Now, that's not to say that I completely abandoned writing projects in general. I consider Frackin' FFS and Frackin' Shellguard to fall into that category, but they have their own issues, and I've talked about those before in past vlogs. Even still, to this day, there is a part of me who wants to create more material like Frackin' FFS, like Frackin' Shellguard, like the Proxima Realms, like Nashronth. But every time I have these thoughts, it's just, I get this wave of painful memories associated with the Proxima Realms coming back to me. That's not to say that I couldn't pull something like that off again, but I'm not interested in doing anything like the Proxima Realms, like Nashronth, like Frackin' FFS, like Frackin' Shellguard at this time. I want to make more fun vlogs like these, and more Starbound mod showcases, and more art like what I post on my art Twitter account. NSFW warning in case you're interested. To summarize, I am in a much better place now than what I was in even a couple of years ago. And it's because I feel like I found myself. I figured out what I want this YouTube channel to be. I found out that I want to be a better artist, and I want to keep going down that path. And so far, that path has brought me to some new friends and a bigger audience than what I had even during the Proxima Realms days. On the one hand, I'm glad that a much wider audience will know about the Proxima Realms, my old passion project, I guess you could say, even if I did not cover absolutely everything related to it here. And you could argue that my work on the Proxima Realms made me a more disciplined content creator. On the other, I'm just as glad that I've moved away from the Proxima Realms. Once again, I feel like I need to say thank you. Thank you for making this trip worthwhile. I really do appreciate it. No matter if you've been around a long time or if you've just subscribed recently, thank you. Thank you for being able to put up with all the nonsense I've thrown out onto the internet throughout all these years, even if some of that did not get much attention. Thank you for continuing to support myself and content like this. I'll probably set up a Q&A soon to help celebrate the occasion, but until then, take care of yourselves, and goodbye for now.